Good morning, Turks and Caicos. Welcome to First Edition. We've got a guest this morning. He is the gentleman who sits at the helm of the government. He's none other than Premier of the Turks and Caicos Islands, the Honorable Charles Washington Mizik. Honorable Premier, good morning. Welcome. Thank you for taking time to join us.
My pleasure, Cheryl.
So it's been 109 days since you won that landslide victory in the general elections, you and your team. What has happened in your first 100 days?
Well, basically, in the last 100 days, we've kind of resumed the work that we started in the first term and kind of pressed the reset button, benefited from the lessons learned in the previous term, and trying to set the compass for the next 5 years. That's essentially what we've been doing, and during that time, I hope we've put in some big blocks in the jar, you know.
Mm-hmm. Premier, your government was handed one of the most impressive wins in TCI's history, with all 9 at-large seats as a victory for your party. How has that translated into sweeping trust into tangible policy directions for your first 100 days?
Well, leading up to the elections, we did a couple of polls, right? And the theme or the focus or the feedback that we got was that people wanted us to focus on cost of living, crime, infrastructure development, youth employment or development, and then some other issues. But those were the 4 top priorities that they laid out, or public was concerned about. So basically, my focus is on addressing those in priority to anything else. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are other priorities, but when you make everything a priority, then nothing is a priority.
Something fails, yes.
Right. Mm-hmm. So yes, that's, I think, obviously, it's humbling. It's really humbling that the people of these islands have given us such a resounding victory, particularly at large, yes. Because they say politics is local. And so, to some extent, one would expect to have significant support locally based on the extent to which local representatives engage with their communities. But to have a sweeping victory at the at-large level is extremely humbling, and it's also says that expectations of the government is extremely high, and so we better be deliver.
Now, I know you're not a gambling man, but did you expect all 9 at-large seats?
To be honest with you, I certainly expected at least 7 of them. I expected at least 7 at-large seats, and I can't speak in detail about.
But that's still a majority
about
of them. Yeah.
About
which ones?
Which ones? You know? I'm sure there are people who also didn't expect me to come through.
Oh,
you know, but
yeah. Now, some critics say that your government has more political capital, and by political capital, I mean, that level of trust and influence that you have now from the electorate. So some critics say that your government has more political capital than any administration in history. Has this translated into an urgency to deliver as well?
Well, for me personally, I focus on 2 things. One, a supermajority, you have to be extremely careful, because supermajorities implodes rather than explodes, right? And so I think it's going to be extremely important to manage the relationship within the party and within the government, so that we can deliver cohesively and with unity. And the other thing is, I I've always treated my whole involvement in government with urgency. Okay? But at the same time, I try not to confuse urgency with important, because someone on the other end of a telephone could be, from their perspective, it's urgent. But from my perspective, it may not be. What may be important to me is what is in the front of me. So I don't like to confuse the two. Yeah. So yeah, but there is both urgency and importance to deliver on the things that's really going to matter 50 years from now. We've come a long way in the last 50 years, but I think in some ways we need to take better control of the next 50 years. I would say in the last 50 years we were sort of made by the circumstances. Now we're in a position to determine those circumstances. So the next 50 years, the decisions we make should be made with the intention of impacting Turks and Caicos Islands, and for the next 50 years, made in our own image, so to speak, rather than somebody else's own.
If you're just joining us, we're talking to our Premier, the Honorable Charles Washington Mizik, here on First Edition. Honorable Premier, there's a lot of public comment. I'm not sure if you've seen them, but a lot of public comment, particularly in the area of government contracts and things that government do, government tenders, that it tends to go to PNP supporters. What measures have you put in place to prevent cronyism, or even to prevent this sort of comments being made?
Two things. Well, it all depends on who you speak to.
True.
Some people will say the opposite, that paddy contracts are going to PBM supporters rather than PNP supporters. Well, I don't come from that angle. I come from the angle that as Premier, I'm responsible to make sure that the playing field is balanced and everyone has a fair shot at the bounties that this country produces, whether it's a paddy contract or a large contract or a scholarship or anything else. So the one thing I don't get involved in is how contracts are awarded and who get them. I think that is a slippery slope that I avoid. We do have a procurement ordinance and regulations, and we do have other rules regarding procurement. I could only assume that those rules are followed, but no minister has the ability or the right or the authority to handpick winners and losers in terms of awarding contracts. And I think it's important for the public to realize that, because the public believe, there are persons in the public who believe that that's under the remit of ministers to decide who gets a contract and who doesn't. There is a process, a bidding process that takes place, and some people are more successful than others because they take the time, they may employ professionals to assist them in putting their bids together, and they may have a strong track record of delivering. There are a whole list of things that are taken into consideration in awarding contracts. So I would advise the public and those contractors who are interested in government contracts to make sure that they do their homework, prepare their bids properly, take the time to learn the process, and there shouldn't be an issue. I believe, particularly in places like Grand Turk, what we need to do is to grow the private sector so people are less dependent on small government paddy contracts, and that's where my focus is.
No, you've been consistent in your responses when it comes to that particular question, because I've often heard you say you don't see blue or yellow, it's Turks and Caicos Islanders, and so you've been consistent in maintaining that opinion. But Premier, how are you ensuring that dissenting voices, those voices that are politically unrepresented, still have a seat in the national conversation?
Well, as I said, if you said it yourself, I don't see blue or yellow when it comes to representing the people of the Turks and Caicos Islands. I do intend to have a national forum sometimes during the summer, because I do believe it is important to have a talk about how we transition, how we transform Turks and Caicos Islands for the next 50 years. And that is going to require all stakeholders coming together. So my plan at the moment is to launch a transformation plan, a transformation platform, or a transformation forum sometime this summer, maybe lasting for a week or maybe a couple of weeks, where whether it's the private sector, civic society, private citizens, statutory bodies, academia, we can meet either together or separately in their stakeholder groups to discuss the way forward and how we put in safeguards, how we ensure the sustainable prosperity of Turks and Caicos. Because ultimately that's what people want. People want to be able to live in dignity, support their families, educate their children, contribute to society, and live in a community that is peaceful and progressive. And that's really where my focus is on.
Yeah. And Honorable Premier, I even heard you mention this last week in your budget address. We keep talking about economic diversification. In your first 100 days, are there any other sectors that you've looked at already?
Well, one of the things that I'm very happy about is the investment that we've made so far in agriculture. And we will continue to make additional investment in agriculture and in fisheries. I mentioned in my address that we have given out the number of grants that we've given to fishermen in South Caicos has actually been unprecedented, because I believe in the area of feeding ourselves is one area that we can diversify the economy in, so that our import bill for food will not increase, proportionate to the growth of the economy. We will always be able to supply a certain percentage of what we eat, but also from a service point of view, to be able to create the linkages that we need to create back to our main tourism product. Now, in terms of other sectors, we have set up more recently in the last few years Finance TCI. The intention was to see how we can diversify into fintech. The new constitution also provides for the establishment of an arbitration center. And one of the things we're looking at doing is how we can set up an independent arbitration center to be able to attract business from the region. And let's say, for example, in the case of TCI, we couldn't have done it here, but because we have an interest. But let's say in the case of TCI, we've had to do our arbitration with Intel Canada, with the ICC, the International Chamber of Commerce. The venue is based in France, and then in Paris, and then of course we ended up having some of those meetings in London, but terribly expensive. And so the whole trend these days is to find a less expensive way of resolving disputes. And so TCI, we're looking at how we can create a niche in that market, because it's not always about bricks and mortars. In fact, it's more and more about information and intellectual property, and those kinds of issues.
And I'm happy you mentioned into health, because let's touch a bit on healthcare. Healthcare remains a major concern for Turks and Caicos Islanders. What would you say, Honorable Premier, in your first 100 days and in the next 100 days, what would you say you'd like to see as the status of healthcare delivery in these islands?
Thanks for the question, because I think we're doing a lot there. In the first place, I think the NHIP, there's no secret that it's been dysfunctional, and dysfunctional to the extent that it's cost us over this year I think in total, with the regular subventions for treatment abroad program, it's probably cost us close to $60 million in the last financial year.
It's a hefty bill.
Some of those would have been costs that might have been accumulated. Mm-hmm. We're still trying to resolve those, but we've taken the bull by the horn now, and we to make sure that systemically it's repurposed, mm-hmm. And it works, and we can better control the cost. Turks and Caicos people deserve with certainty to know what will happen to them if they get sick. People are contributing through their payroll deduction to their health care, and the government have a responsibility to make sure that that is delivered, and we are doing so. On the other hand, to take the pressure off the hospitals, we are looking at establishing polyclinics. We're in the process of acquiring a facility at the moment that would be able to deliver all of the basic diagnostics that is necessary. And so, yeah, health, delivering health for TC Islanders is a priority for government. Mm-hmm. A healthy nation is necessary to build wealth. Mm-hmm. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Honorable Premier, okay, we're talking about priorities, and one of the other prominent issues in the country is crime. And I don't know if you know, but you take a whipping on crime. There are individuals who say, you know, the Premier can't divorce himself from crime. He can't say it's merely the United Kingdom's responsibility. You know, he sits on the National Security Council. There are a number of comments. But we've seen you and your government take action and making sure that we have assistance from around the region. We have more boots on the ground now than we've had within the last few months. What efforts is your government making to ensure that Turks and Caicos is ridding itself of crime and those criminal elements?
First of all those comments made by the public is absolutely correct. I cannot divorce myself from a situation I wouldn't attempt to. This is people elected me because they expected me to solve these issues for them. And so I take full responsibility, even though it's not a portfolio responsibility that has been assigned locally. Mm-hmm. I will be agitating to ensure that national security is and responsibility for policing is perhaps in the next iteration of the Constitution is transferred to the local government, because essentially we're paying the bill. And I am totally dissatisfied with the services and the support we've been getting from the United Kingdom. Right? We are basically paying the bill. They've done very little to help. It's just been Band-Aid and talk. Mm-hmm. And they haven't exposed themselves or their own officers to the street, put them on any boots on the ground here. They have provided us with some quote-unquote technical support, investigative, etc. But I don't know that, well, certainly I'm not satisfied or happy that they've done everything that they could do. Mm-hmm. And so my government is taking charge, right? And we have, and I have the relationship with regional governments, prime ministers and premiers, and have the ability to pick up the phone and speak to them about challenges that we are facing. And while I don't want to take credit for what is happening full credit, because it's a team effort with the governor's office and with my office, but we have been working on delivering boots on the ground from the region, and I think that is the solution. As long as this surge lasts, we need to provide support to bring it under control. As you know, we have had last week 40 officers come into the territory, 30 from Jamaica and 20 from Barbados. I had a meeting this morning with the Commissioner of Police. That's why I'm late. We All of those men should be deployed fully in the community by Thursday of this week. I think if should be a demonstration of the commitment of this government to try to bring the crime problem under control. In saying so, the nature of crime in the TCI, I think it's important that the public is aware, because a lot of what is happening now is being done by what we call transnational criminals from outside of TCI. That is not to say that some of our own young men haven't been caught up in this. But more recently, if you look at the murder-on-murder situation, it's almost coming, and the persons who are committing them are from a particular demographics. And that situation is not going to change anytime soon. And so, from a policy point of view, some decisions have to be made. But I do believe, given the increased tactical force that we have on the ground, you will see a difference in the next near future.
Yeah.
But we are committed, and we have 75 new officers that we're going to be training. We will be delivering physical presence in Blue Hills and in Five Keys on a temporary basis until we can do so permanently in terms of some kind of police post, so that the people can have confidence in law enforcement, and that police is closer to where some of the hot spots are taking place.
Yeah.
So we're keeping the Turks and Caicos safe is my business. I have a duty to protect the citizens of these islands.
Yeah.
And I can promise you that my government will spare no effort in doing so. We will draw on the Treasury for the security of the people of these islands is in fact my top priority.
Thank you so much, Honorable Premier. Let's stay there for a minute. In the face of ongoing migration challenges, particularly irregular migration, has your government, in its first 100 days, taken any measures to ensure that our borders are more secure?
Well, we've invested heavily in the border services during the life of the previous term, and we continue to do so. There have been an increase in interdiction. I think we made a big fanfare about reorganizing customs and immigration into one border force. We will have to see how that works. I want to appeal to immigration officers, border force officers, to behave with integrity, both in terms of aiding and abetting illegal activity or legal entry, and facilitating the importation of contraband, to be careful not to be caught up in being bought, because this is such a sensitive area. It undermines, when people behave improperly, it undermines the whole system. And of course, I don't have the ability to know that because I'm not out there. But based on what's on the street, and I hope that is not the case, but based on what's on the street, we have a significant number of our persons in those areas that are compromised. And so I just want to appeal to them that they're not doing themselves any good in the long run, or the country any good in the long run. We will continue to invest in border force. And the situation that happened the other day with the Colombian is totally unfortunate, okay? And I can understand the reaction by the officers. And that's totally unfortunate that happened. And I don't know all of the circumstances. It is still under investigation. I hope to be able to speak to it once all of the information is in. But I don't want to join the chorus and make statements and speak about things that I don't have the details on. This is, at the end of the day, still a country of law and order, and we need to, not only persons from outside, but persons who live in the country need to make sure that they act in a way that will make the TCI as a place that not only appears to be a place, but in fact is a place where law and order is respected at all levels.
Yeah. Honorable Premier, as you just spoke and appealing to officers, you sounded both as a leader and as a parent. I mean, I could almost hear you speaking to your children or to mine. So in terms of youth empowerment, what can our young people look forward to from your administration this term? You talked a lot about youth empowerment. We hear, I think as a people, we're never really going to be truly satisfied. It's human nature that we're never satisfied. But, you know, we still hear people say there are not enough scholarships, or, you know, our young people are moving in droves to the United Kingdom. What's your message to the young people of the Turks and Caicos Islands?
Well, I think young people of Turks and Caicos don't get enough credit, right? We have some brilliant young people in Turks and Caicos. And to be honest, personally, I buy into the concept of reverse training, or reverse, what's it called now? There's a terminology we use. But essentially, an older person could learn so much from younger people, and I learn so much from the young people in my own office. I think the terminology is reverse mentoring. So I get mentored, particularly when it comes to the technology aspect of my job, by the young people, and we have a lot of young people in this country. I was so impressed yesterday at the presentation by Zaria Ingram.
Yes.
You know, and then we have other young people like Mr. Missick. What's his first name?
Andy.
Andy Missick, and I can go on and on. There's a list of young people that are distinguishing themselves in these islands. So I don't want to bypass those people and not those young people and not honor them for the good work and good citizens they are, right? But too many of our young men in particular are falling through the cracks, right? And we need to address that issue. So one of the ways we're looking at addressing the issue of young people missing out on opportunities is through apprenticeship, through mentorship, and of course we're looking at putting in place an organized youth service program, right? Working with the public sector and the private sector. And these are some of the things we'll discuss at the forum that I speak to you about. So that young people who may not be interested in heading on for academic qualification at a tertiary, secondary or tertiary school could actually go into the job place and learn on the job. There was no one less than Einstein who said apprenticeship is the only way to learn, right? Okay, and so when I look at what's happening in the TCI, and you look at the construction industry, who's really making the money, and lots of it too. So I think this phobia we have, or this aversion to physical work is something that we have to correct, and we have a preoccupation with sort of academic degrees, which is good. I mean, I think people should want to learn, and I think we should provide scholarships, but scholarships should be provided at all levels. I think it's time for us to look at making sure we have a functional trade school, and to provide people for work in the hospitality and in the building trades. Because, and I say this, and people may ridicule me for this, but a child out of high school goes to university, gets a bachelor's degree, never spends a day on the job, and then goes and gets a master's degree. His worth to an organization is limited, until he or she gets the experience that's necessary to really make a contribution to that organization. So I encourage young people to perhaps take a gap year, whether it's after high school or between degrees, to build up some experience before you go on to do that master's degree. Because really, a master's degree without experience really make you a better thinker, or appreciate the sort of increase your lateral vision, so to speak, but it doesn't really make you technically better to do the job that you're called to do. So
has it improved your action skills?
It doesn't improve your delivery skills. You know.
So, Premier, we were talking earlier about the young people. You just mentioned them, but what sort of advice do you give to that young person? Yet you mentioned a lot of the apprenticeship program and the mentorship, but there's still those disillusioned young people who seem to think that the grass is greener outside of TCI because they don't seem to be sharing in the wealth.
Well, I think that's young people all over. When I was a young person, I always thought I would want to get out of here as fast as I could, right? Because the grass was greener on the other side. Well, Homer Birnbach says the grass is green over the cesspit. So it doesn't always mean. And of course, they have social lives that are limiting here. And I believe young people should go out to learn and come back. I think it's important. This is a small place, and I think it's important for young people to go get skills, get the exposure that they require, so that they can come back and TCI can benefit from that. Okay, so I will never be the person to say don't go. What I would say, make use of the facilities here, the community college, for example, and any other training opportunities that TCIG will put in place. And you can still go away, and I don't have a problem with the young people going away and staying for a few years to build up their skills. Right? But I know for a fact, because I know some young people, some of them are relatives of mine, who are very educated, have good jobs in places like America, but they're not making the same progress as some of the same young people here who may be a little less qualified, but who's actually have a steady job, no tax, they don't have to buy winter clothes, and so they may actually be homeowners already in their 30s or under 30, right? Whereas the same Turks and Caicos Island young person living in America is still paying rent, right? And the prospect of them owning a home is farther and farther away. So I think there are two sides of the coin. Yes, they may be having a ball with their friends and going to all sorts of different social outlets, but in terms of they're building a asset, I think a lot of the young people here who are working in the public service, for example, are doing far better than they are.
Yeah. Now, Honorable Premier, yesterday we witnessed the National Heroes Day ceremony, and some people who are watching it online complain bitterly of the quality of service. Has your government in its first 100 days, or is your government looking at the possibility of digital governance and cybersecurity and expansion in broadband services?
That's a very good question. That is exactly why we set up the new ministry headed by Honorable E.J. Saunders. Honorable Saunders is probably by far one of the most knowledgeable, intelligent person in the country as it comes to technology and digitalization of systems. And so that's his job to make sure that, Radio Turks and Caicos actually now sits under him. The further development of the national ID now sits under him, and the whole digitalization of government services sits under his portfolio, right? And he has indicated already some timelines in relationship to the delivery of certain types of services, including the elimination of lines at the Treasury and a number of other targets that has been set. So yes, I think it is past time that we leapfrog over old systems and benefit from technology, and that's a big part of, I think I forget how many millions of dollars that's been made available in order to do that.
And okay, you also formed the previous administration to this last general election. Are there any early signs, Premier, that will distinctly differentiate this administration, this term you have here, from your 2021-2025 term?
Well, I think it's a continuum, right? Of course, there were things that we did, some preparatory work that we did that we will be able to implement in this term. For example, I'm expecting that we will be able to see some real traction on the Howard Hamilton International Airport. We have laid aside some $50 million over the next 2 years, over the next 2 or 3 years for roadworks. We have to redo or redevelop the Leeward Highway. We have to create a series of parallel roads, both through Blue Hills and going to the other east end of the island. So you heard me say cost of living, crime, infrastructure, and youth empowerment. Those are our priorities. So infrastructure is very important to facilitate commercial development, which the economy needs in order for the GDP to expand. So one of the difference that is going to help to define the future of this government is the sort of a rationalization of our revenue base. As it stands at the moment, we need to be fair, objective, and true. There's a large section of the community, our business class, professional class, who are not paying their fair share, taking home millions of dollars a year. And the only thing they pay is NIB and NHIP, which have a ceiling, right? Nothing else, right? We have to look at ways to broaden the revenue base so that everybody pays their fair share. It shouldn't be that, because there are some people who will exist at the bottom of the rung in terms of their income and their social mobility. And so we have to look after those people. And the persons who are doing well, better in the economy, that's part of the system of being a brother's keeper. And so one of the things we will be doing and are doing, and putting the country on notice, is that we are looking at how we can rationalize, reorganize our tax system so that it is progressive. Because right now it's not progressive. We have revenue leakage suggested by the IMF or CARTAC and the three major revenue heads, 3 or 5 major revenue heads of up to $27 million, right? I made a commitment or made a statement that my intention is to increase government revenue annually by $500,000 a year. I mean, $500 million, is it? $100 million a year over the next 5 years to take revenue to $1 billion, because that's what it's going to take to build infrastructure, to build social network, so that old people who've given their life to the islands are not finding themselves making a decision when they're old as to whether they can afford a nutritious meal or a safe place to live. I mean, this is this is a part of what we have to do. I say it all the time. I believe in the sort of I believe in the Scandinavian social system where people have to be cared for. They make their contribution when they can, but when they're older, they need to be cared for. And that is the same thing about young people. We need to make sure that they have the ability to develop talents that they can contribute to the economy and the country. And everybody pays their fair share.
Premier, I'm going to shift gears a little bit, going back to your majority win. With nearly total parliamentary control, how do you avoid the dangers of political complacency or echo chambers? In other words, what's keeping you and your cabinet honest and challenged?
That's a very good question. It's a very, very good question, because at the end of the day, what is integrity? Integrity is doing the right thing when no one is looking, right? And and so to some extent, it is a leadership. It has to be a part of one's leadership ethos, right? It was I think Stephen Covey who have this idea that an integrity is the moment between an impulse and a decision, right? When you have an impulse to do particularly the wrong thing, that's when the integrity comes in. And so my appeal would be to my colleagues is to lead with integrity and not to take advantage of the position, particularly to discriminate against the minority in Parliament. Right? The leader of the opposition and myself have a very good relationship. But at the end of the day, it's not about, as I start, it's not about the people who vote for him and the people who vote for me.
Right.
It's about the Turks and Caicos people, right? And so my job as leader of the PNP and leader of the country is to make sure that everybody have a fair shot at the best life that TCI can offer. But there will be people who will rest on their laurels. There's something called the Pareto principle, where you've got 20% of the people doing 80% of the work, right? And that is no different in politics than it is in managing a business, than it is in any area of life. And so you will have people who will not be carrying their load, and someone have to always be compensating for them, right? But I think together, as a government, that's what we have to do. And that's what I will appeal to my colleagues to do, whether in cabinet or outside of cabinet. Carry each other's burden, right? Where one person is falling behind and slipping, somebody should be picking them up. It's just the reality.
I think you answered this already for us, Honorable Premier, but just to recap, would you say that the second term, your second term now in government, is more about transformation or consolidation? Is there a new agenda, or are you merely fulfilling old promises?
Well, I think it's both, a bit of consolidating the gains that we've made, but also transformation in the way we deliver for people of these islands. The level of synergy in decision making between all stakeholders. That's why I talk about having a forum to speak about the transformation of TCI, where everyone will come around the table and to help to identify priorities, right, that we can work together on. So it is a bit of both. For example, you hear us talk about 24/7 government. That's transformational. When people could sit at their home, process their driver's license, go online, search the land registry for their title and that sort of stuff. And that's all in the works. That will happen and will happen very soon. So those are transformational, and we need to build on that to make sure it's more pervasive across government. So that's, and to consolidate on gains that we make as we make them. You know, provide safe places for young people to learn, provide comfortable places for old people to live out their days, and to make sure that the working conditions within the public service are conducive to productivity. You know, making sure that they get the level of support, including a living pension, and while they're working to ensure that the things like insurance cover, health insurance cover, to supplement the national program is available to them, and gratuity and all these kind of stuff. These are gains that we want to consolidate, but at the same token, we want to transform the way they deliver for the people of the islands, right? Because there's a responsibility for every privilege, and so that's what we have to drive home to our people. With the privilege of being a Turks and Caicos Islander, you have every right to expect to be discriminated, for the government to make policies that will discriminate positively in your interest. But you also have a responsibility, right? You have a responsibility to yourself and your country, right? To make sure that you behave in such a way that you're contributing and you're not costing, because too many people look at the government as a sort of as a grandma or a parent who always giving, right? And they don't have to do anything but take. And that's a mentality, that's a culture that we need to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Honorable Premier, was there anything in your first 100 days that you said, I must achieve, I have to achieve? Was there any specific that you had that you wanted to make sure was done in your first 100 days?
I'm sure there was. There are quite a few of them. I don't remember all of them because, but one of the things that I really set out to do in the first 100 days of my administration, because it was happening ahead of the election. I was aware of the issue at NHIP ahead of the election, but I also was aware of the challenges we had with crime. And I don't know if the public would remember, I spoke about the assistance we were getting from Jamaica. I didn't say Jamaica, I said the Caribbean, before the elections. In fact, I was expecting it to be delivered before the elections. And once the election was behind me, I went to work with a vengeance to make sure that we get the help we needed, and including calling my counterparts in both Jamaica and in Barbados, a Minister for National Security, and working through the governor's office to make sure this was delivered.
Right.
But also to ensure that we now have a system in place, consultants in place to help us untangle what is a very complicated web in the delivery of care, particularly the health treatment abroad program for TC Islanders who have to go abroad for treatment.
Right.
That is going to take a little while. But also, we're making progress with the relationship, trying to sort out our relationship with InterHealth Canada so that the cost of healthcare in these islands are affordable. Because when the contract was made with InterHealth and TCIG, it was made on the basis that treatment abroad costs will go down and that health care will be more affordable in TCI. And that has been completely the opposite. So we need to arrest that problem. And it has to be addressed proportionately because the population has increased. So obviously healthcare as a total cost would have had to increase. But in terms of the proportion per capita, it's probably higher than anywhere else in the Caribbean, right? Mm-hmm. Now, when it works, right? But it does need massaging. Mm. Yeah.
As we wind down, Honorable Premier, so the first 100 days, no doubt, has set the tone for your term. Is there a habit or a routine that you've adopted that helps you stay grounded?
Well, I wouldn't say there's anything new. Mm. I grew up in a place and a time when responsibilities were taken seriously, and whether you like it or not, you do it, okay? So my position is, I've taken on this job. No one gave it to me. I asked for it, and people reposed their trust in me. So I have to do everything not to betray that trust, which means I have to work overtime, long hours to help to deliver what they expect me to deliver. That has always been my habit. I've always had a habit I consider myself, if not the smartest person, the person who is very steady, okay? A steady hand, a steady hard-working hand, because there's a saying that the race is not to the swift, but he who endures to the end. Mm-hmm. And I really believe that. Right? The Desiderata said there will always be people smarter and better than you, right? But we should all be humble in who we are and what we can achieve for the people who depend on us. Mm-hmm. You know. Mm-hmm.
Honorable Premier, I want you to look straight at your camera and speak to Turks and Caicos. Tell us, as a people, what we can do to help make you and your government better, to help keep you accountable to the people, and then in turn, tell us what we can expect from you for the rest of this term.
Right, okay. I believe citizenship has responsibility, and I believe what TCI has lost is volunteerism. There's so much to do in Turks and Caicos, and everybody can help. Everybody can help their neighbor. Right? An issue of crime. It's been said over and over again. If you know something, say something. We're trying to build the trust that we need to build in our police officers, right? So that you can feel comfortable in providing information. Each one of us are a brother's keeper. So it's important that we take that seriously. But equally important is the dignity of work. There are just too many of us who complain when foreign entities and foreign individuals seem to come to TCI and do well, and we complain that they're doing well because the government has been giving you the opportunity. Opportunity is something that you take. And yes, we have to provide a playing field, the environment, the regulations, the laws that's in your favor. But it's up to you to take the opportunities that are crafted for you. And so there are tons of it available. And and I can't list all of it on this show, but if you look at things like first homeowners policy, STEM duty, grants through Invest TCI, and now the list goes on, and what we're currently doing by putting in a ceiling or a threshold for contractors to ensure that foreign contractors don't come and take jobs at a certain level. There are lots of things this government is doing to ensure that Turks and Caicos Islanders create opportunities for Turks and Caicos Islanders. But at the end of the day, there's a saying, you could take a horse to the well, but you can't force it to drink. So you can do for yourself what I can't do for you by taking the opportunities that I provide. I make a commitment to every Turks and Caicos Islander that as long as I'm sitting where I'm sitting, as long as I occupy the position that I occupy, my decisions will always be objective in the favor of every Turks and Caicos Islander. I don't like the situation where people come to me and want me to do something for them that I can't do for the whole country, because that's why it's important to create policies. And my focus is on creating policies that's going to lift everybody. And so if you really want to be a brother's keeper, I'm happy. My doors are open, my ears are open to take suggestions and to craft policies that will improve the lot of all of our citizens. So, as I said at one stage in this interview, I don't know everything. In fact, people in my position are sometimes too busy putting out fire that we don't know a lot of things. And so I'm happy to be a good listener, and my job is to work for you, and that's what I've always said, and that's what my objective is. So thank you.
Premier Mizik, thank you so much for your candor and your time. This morning's conversation was not just a reminder or a reflection of your past 100 days, but a look ahead at the pressure and purpose of your administration. And we thank you for your service, sir. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Carol.
This has been First Edition with the Premier of the Turks and Caicos Islands. We'll see you again on Thursday.